What's really going on inside the mind of a criminal right in that moment before they act? And maybe the more chilling question is, why do people who seem totally normal sometimes snap and do something terrible? In this explainer, we're going to get into the psychology of it all. You hear about a crime on the news and you can't help but wonder, right? What were they thinking? Was this some cold, calculated master plan, or was it just chaos? And then there's the really tricky one. How does someone who seems just like us, a neighbor, a friend, a coworker, suddenly cross a line they can never uncross? Well, psychology actually gives us a map to understand how this can happen. So let's dive in. So, where do we even begin to unpack this? Well, like with so many things in life, the story often starts way back in childhood. It turns out the seeds for this kind of behavior are often planted years, even decades before a crime is ever committed. Okay, get this. Psychological studies suggest that a whopping 70% of criminal behavior can be traced back to what happened in childhood. That's not just a small factor. That's huge. For many, it's the main driver. I mean, just think about it for a second. If you grow up surrounded by chaos, by violence, by just not knowing if you're safe, your brain learns a very, very different lesson about the world than a kid who feels secure. It learns that the world isn't a playground, it's a battlefield. And this isn't just a feeling, you know? It physically changes the brain. The brain is incredible at adapting, and so it literally rewires itself. That fight or flight response that's supposed to be for emergencies, for them, it becomes the default setting, always on alert, always looking for a threat.
So when you look at it through that lens, a criminal act might not come from some evil place. It might be a twisted, desperate attempt to survive in a world that's taught you from day one that you're in a fight for your life. Okay. So, a dangerous childhood can definitely set the stage, but what about what's going on inside a person's head? For some people, the problem isn't just a learned response, it's a fundamental lack of what you might call internal brakes.
And this leads us to a specific condition called antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD. This is a clinical diagnosis where the person just has a profound inability to care about the rights, feelings, or safety of other people.
Think of it like this. For most of us, guilt and empathy are those internal brakes. We feel bad when we hurt someone. We can imagine their pain. That stops us. But for a brain with ASPD, as you can see here, those brakes, they're just gone.
And that's really the heart of the matter. If doing something harmful carries no emotional price for you, if you don't feel that pang of guilt, what's to stop you? Hurting someone becomes just a simple calculation, like deciding which route to take to work. The emotional weight just isn't there.
But, okay, ASPD is a specific disorder. What about all the other people, the normal people we asked about right at the start? Well, this next part is about a specific and frankly a pretty terrifying moment when the mind just collapses.
You know, we have this image from movies of the criminal mastermind planning every little detail. But the reality is, many of the most devastating crimes are completely impulsive. They aren't the result of a plan, they're the result of a total loss of control. So here's how it can go down. It starts with a trigger, some kind of extreme stress or rage. This causes what psychologists call an emotional hijack. The emotional, primal part of the brain completely takes over and shoves the rational brain out of the driver's seat. That's the engine behind a so-called crime of passion.
And this is the absolute key. For those few critical seconds, the logical brain is literally offline. It is disconnected. The part that thinks about consequences, about right and wrong, is just gone. They can't think straight. Some call it moment blindness, because the future completely disappears.
And that idea of impulse, of the future just vanishing, that leads us right into the final piece of this puzzle, the brain's reward system. For some people, that system is wired for one thing and one thing only, right now.
The entire focus narrows to the immediate payoff, that quick hit of reward. whether it's money from a theft, a feeling of power, or the satisfaction of revenge. It becomes so overwhelming that it blocks out everything else.
So, what about prison or a lifetime of regret? Well, to a brain wired this way, those things feel abstract, like they belong in a different universe. They aren't as real or as important as the reward that is right there, in front of them.
Now, this isn't just about someone having poor willpower. There's biology at play here. It's often linked to the prefrontal cortex, which is basically the brain's self-control center. If that part of the brain isn't functioning properly, the ability to say no to that immediate impulse for a better long-term outcome is seriously weakened.
Okay, so we've talked about childhood trauma, about personality wiring, these sudden emotional hijacks, and the powerful pull of impulse. Now, let's try to pull all those threads together.
What we end up with is a very different picture of crime. It's usually not a simple case of someone being pure evil. It's more like a tragic recipe, right? A perfect storm where past trauma and a bad environment crash into a brain that already has weak impulse control.
And this is the most important thing to take away from all of this. Explaining the psychology is not the same as excusing the action. The harm is real. But if we only ever punish without trying to understand the why, we're just setting ourselves up to see the cycle happen again and again. Understanding is the first step to prevention.
Because really, at the end of the day, knowledge is our best defense. By understanding the human mind, how it works, how it can break, and where it's vulnerable, we can start to build a safer society. Not just by building better alarms, but by helping to build stronger, more resilient people.